This is Robert Phoenix, and you are here to connect with me on the live stream tonight. And I'm not getting any video, so I'm going to try to work on that. Give me 1 second here. Give me 1 moment as I attempt to do a little camera magic. So shouldn't be that hard. Give me 1 sec. Let's see what we have. Here we go. What's happening, everybody? Got a little bit of a different backdrop tonight, and working on some subtle upgrades here in the Robert Phoenix world. RobertPhoenix.com. I think we got it. I'm going to do another backlight maybe next week, and that way we'll get rid of the shadows. Anyway, you can see that I've got a really sort of bold astrological wheel behind me. How is everybody tonight? Let's just do a quick little check in with people in the chat room as we all gather together. Dearly beloveds, as we gather together. Liz got her notification. That's great. There's Anna. Hi, Anna. Yes, can you see me now? I bet you can see me now. Hi, Jennifer. There's Robin. Hello, Robin. We're just going to hang out a little bit, shoot the shit just a little bit here. Let me see if I can get another window open. I think I do. I think I'm good here. I can sort of go back and forth between the two. There is Justice. What a great name, Justice Moody. I love that. Justice Moody. Sounds like a name of a preacher, Justice Moody. The Reverend, the very Reverend Justice Moody. Hi, hey, there's Kristen Lang. What's going on, Kristen? Kristen is, by the way, Kristen is an exceptional artist. She's been doing some really good, really beautiful paintings, illustrations lately. You can find them over on Facebook. Hey, there's Alexis. What's going on, Alexis? Nice to see you. Black Market Medicine has arrived. I just got to figure out how to bring Jasper and Rosie into this scene. Jasper's right here. He's trying to figure out how to get into the party, which he probably no doubt will at some point. If I know Jasper, he'll do a Michael Jordan and jump up here onto the new dais, as it were. Yeah. Oh, Kristen's blushing. Kristen, are you selling that art? Are you making it into a commercial, quasi-commercial enterprise? I saw that Randy wanted to buy one of your pieces. Very cool stuff. Very, very cool. Yeah. How is everybody? How are you? What is my backdrop? Not yet. Well, Kristen, I think you're going to be nudged into it. That's my sense. So the backdrop is an interesting story. Oh, look who's here. See, they've got to get in on it, right? They've got to get in on it. The backdrop is an interesting story. So I was looking for something astrological. Yeah, there she is. I was looking for something astrological, and I stumbled across this thing, and you'll never, it's like such a bizarre thing, right? So this is, technically speaking, a cover for a picnic table of all things. So who would have this as a cover for a picnic table? Well, I'll tell you who would have it. It would be people from Croatia, because that's where this originates from. This originates from Croatia. And guess who was selling it, of all places? Walmart. I got this from Walmart online. So some artist in Croatia who does these for picnic tables has to deal with Walmart. And I think I might have gotten the last one or something like that. Anyway, it's kind of cool, right? You can see, there's Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, right? Over here, there's Libra. You see Libra right there. Yeah. Anyway, I've had this for a while. I've just had to redo various parts of the studio here at the worldwide headquarters of robertphoenix.com, based out of Fredericksburg, Texas. So let's see what else is going on in the chat room. Does not have the Walmart look. Hey Joe, what's going on? No, man, this thing comes from Croatia, right? So I don't know. Now it's back there. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Next week, I get that third key light. Everything will be illumined. It'll be very illumined, and I think it'll really sort of push the astrological message of the show. How is everybody? Friday, man. What was everybody's Friday like? My Friday, last Friday, the energy of Friday just knocked the shit out of me. I mean, I rarely get like pushed around by energies, but Friday, there was a lot happening on Friday. And, you know, Regina and I were doing our winter show together, and we tried to make it happen on Friday, and it just wouldn't happen. Whether it was her or whether it was me, there was all these glitches, and we just said, you know, screw it. We're gonna circle back and, you know, take up the cause on Monday. So, but Friday was just, wow, intense energy, really intense. Like I kept like dropping things, you know, I kept dropping things. I tripped when I was sort of going through and creating this environment here. It was like, it was wild. And, you know, it was total Mercury retrograde energy. Like we could not hit that launch button on Friday. Let's see what else everybody has to say. There's Haven. Hi, Haven. Welcome. Friday was great. Saturday I got sick. Spent the weekend in Galveston. Shit knocking energy several days in a row now. Yes, I would agree. I'd agree. Galveston, one of my favorite Glenn Campbell songs. I like Galveston. Galveston's interesting. I was there during the summertime. I like it. It's a very cool place. Finca, aka Lynn, said my Friday was the same, sucked. Darcy, sky open for me, beautiful. Kristen, I am dropping things too. Well, I was dropping things, but I rarely drop stuff. I'm pretty good dexterity. Justice said third week of Mercury retro always feels distorted. Oof. Amen to that, brother. Haven, remember Venus, Uranus opposed now. Yeah, Grand Cross with the notes. That's true. Absolutely. And then there's our good friend Ani. Steve and Chris say computers acting nuts. Yeah. Yeah, the last few days were insane, totally insane. Okay, so while we're waiting to kind of get up to speed and people show up, I'll tell you guys a very interesting, at least I think it's an interesting story. This happened to be in New York, and it was, let's see, it was around 1998. 1998, and I'm in New York City. And actually, this would be 1997, and I'm in New York City. And I'm there, I'm doing like press stuff and lots, you know, it was a very interesting time. Anyway, so I meet a young woman who became a good friend of mine. She was a publicist for a company called Tom and Andy, and they were doing a lot of sound stuff, like a really interesting, they created this product called the Brain. It was way ahead of its time, and it would allow you to mix and sample all kinds of different genres of music. And if you're a music producer or an engineer, you know, and you were doing commercial sound work, it would be like having a brain that could, you know, do these sort of syntheses, these mixes of synthesis, right? Anyway, it was a very interesting product, and I'm out there, I'm hanging out with this company, and the first night I get there, I'm at this rooftop party in Williamsburg, and you know, I'm sitting there, I'm hanging out, we're having barbecue, it's great. And we're having a few adult beverages, and I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden this ball comes flying across the room. There's a big kind of like warehousey space on this rooftop. This tennis ball comes flying across the room, I had a beer and it knocks my beer off the table. And it was this guy throwing the ball for his dog. And knocks. So this starts a whole series of incidents where things are falling around me the entire time I'm in New York City. It's really bizarre. And people are starting to notice this, right? They're starting to, because I'm hanging out with a bunch of people, they're starting to notice this falling phenomenon. And at one point, I'm at this opening for this Virgin megastore, and it's in 42nd Street. It's a big deal, right? Richard Branson's there. He was, he had kind of a jerky vibe. Who else was there? Liv Tyler and Joaquin Phoenix. And they were walking around arm in arm, like they were in this really weird bubble, And then you would walk past them, and it was like they were like from an episode of Star Trek, And they just nod at you. It was like, what the fuck is that about, right? These people are odd, right? So they had a bunch of bands playing. Natalie Merchant played. Bobby Digital from Wu-Tang, he played. Sean Lennon played. So I'm standing there. I'm standing next to this gal who's kind of part of this group of people I was hanging out with, and we're right by this end cap, right by this end cap. And all of a sudden, from above, like next level, somebody drops their beer, and it comes flying down, and it hits all these CDs on the end cap. Nobody gets splashed or anything, but it was like, it was like another one of these very strange events where things were falling around me the whole time. I mean, none of it was hitting me, but it was very bizarre. It was super, super bizarre. And it was just a strange, like, a series of odd synchronicities. Okay, so the last day I'm there, the last day I'm in New York City, I'm at my friend's big, kind of flat, right? Big open warehouse space, and it's in Williamsburg. And I'm sitting there and I'm talking with, I think it was my girlfriend at the time, I'm talking with her on the phone. And all of a sudden, I kid you not, and there was a guy there, a good friend, Mark, he was sitting there. He'd been seeing all this falling stuff, right? And all of a sudden, the ceiling opens up, and this kind of hard wrought iron brass candelabra with like 3 placeholders for candles comes crashing through the ceiling. I kid you not, and right next to me. And Mark was like, he says, basically, what did he say? It's like, holy F, man. He was South Africa. Holy fuck, man. Man, that's too weird, So this hole opens up in the ceiling. And apparently they were doing work like 2 stories above. And something happened with the floor. And this candelabra went flying through the floor, went through the next floor, which was the ceiling of this place that I was staying in. And all of a sudden I hear this voice, and it's like, "Are you okay down there?" I'm like, yeah, I'm okay. Oh, good. Sorry about that. My name is Ira. I'm like, okay. It was strange. I had all these objects falling around me the whole time I was in New York City. And this candelabra, right? This candelabra falls through the ceiling of this freaking live workspace. I mean, it was crazy. It was one of these strange weeks where, the synchronicities were just flying off the hook. So for me, I've got Uranus on my midheaven in New York City. So all kinds of strange shit always happens to me when I'm in New York City. I've been there for a while, but trust me, man, it's not an odd place. The night before, so I was there hanging out with my friends, and we were talking about like 666, and how 666 is in some ways the number of man, because in our cells we have 6 protons, six electrons, and what's the other? 6 neutrons. 6 neutrons, protons, electrons, right? They're all spinning around inside of our cells, right? So that's where theoretically the 666 part of it comes from. So I was talking about that. And then the next day I go to, there's this record company called Mute Records, and I went to go interview this guy named Barry Adamson. who was a bass player for a band called Magazine, and Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. And Barry Adamson, he's actually a really talented guy. And he was doing this, his record that came out at the time was As Above, So Below, right? So there was all these like strange kinds of weird, occult, esoteric things going on, objects falling. And then Barry, I get a picture from Barry. It's like a picture. It's like his press picture. And he's sitting in this big red chair and he looks like the devil. And he says, from Barry Adamson, Secret Agent 00666. And I was just talking about this the night before. I mean, the whole thing was just off the chain with synchronicity and high strange. I actually kind of like that stuff. It makes life interesting. Let's see what's going on in the old chat room. Let's see. We got Usar Oswald. Are the Darcy on CW Chanter stream? Yes. Okay, we got a new person here. Let's see what else we have. There's Oswald Spengler. Hey, y'all, my first time watching this guy live. Well, hopefully, Oswald, it won't be your last. Welcome to the party. Got a pretty good group of people in the chat room. And I've got some good stuff to talk to you guys tonight. We're going to do screen share. It's going to be, I think, a pretty cool experience. George H.W. Bush just passed away, mercifully. I have a really difficult time listening to, all the kind of gut-wrenching eulogizing of this man who was a first-class criminal and had like one of the greatest crime syndicate families. Oh, what do we have here? Oh, my cats decided that they wanted to, speaking of synchronicity and high strange, that was a Rosie moment. The cats are not happy because they're not being able to climb up on the table in their usual manner. So now they're being disruptive cats. Hold on a second. Let me get this together. One second, boys and girls. We're going to figure this thing out here. There we go. Sorry about that. I'm not quite ready for the grainy 16 millimeter look just yet. That'll be the art version. Rosie decided that she was like, pissed, man. I can't get up there and be with you. So anyway, we've got this eulogizing going on, and I've got a post up on my website, which where I break down, certain parts of his life and the damage that he did within 4 years of being president. I mean, 4 short years. And I look at his chart. Well, I don't really look at his chart so much, but I look at aspects that happened when he was president of the United States. And I mean, first of all, he runs basically it's not illegal because Congress decided that they were actually going to sign off on that war, right? Last 2 wars that they've signed off on were Gulf War I and Gulf War II. Everything else, they haven't signed off on anything. Because once the Patriot Act hit, they can basically do whatever the fuck they want, right? The Patriot Act overrides the Constitution, if you're not quite aware of that or familiar with it, but that's really the case. So Bush starts Gulf War I, and thousands of Iraqis are killed. It's a slaughter, the coalition of the willing, all that bullshit, basically to start the New World Order, to kickstart the New World Order, right? It's all part of it. We have men and women that suffer from Gulf War syndrome, terrible, absolutely terrible inoculations, these vile vaccines. And it opens the gate for where we are now, because of course his son has to go in and finish the job. And once 9/11 happened and theoretically gave him and his cronies like Cheney and Rummy and the neocons and the Zionists the green light, we've been there ever since. And our world it's been lesser. It's been a lesser model of the world ever since then. So that's just one thing, right? Gulf War I was just one crime. It was a crime. I mean, Saddam Hussein did nothing. Everything was ginned up. All the testimony, the eyewitness sort of, accounts of what the Iraqi soldiers did to the Kuwaitis, and you know, the sarin and all the nerve gas. It was all a bunch of lies. It was a mound of lies that they were able to market a war with. So I get into that. We're going to look at tonight, by the way, we're going to look at when the Gulf War starts, and we're going to look at it in relationship to Bush's chart. That's one of the charts we'll look at tonight. He also went after his competition, his drug competition. You're going into Bogota, Colombia, to take out Pablo Escobar, who was outside. You know, the Bush family have been running. They've been running drugs. They've been running cocaine for decades and decades and decades. You go back to Prescott Bush and his relationship with the Nazis. You know, Prescott Bush was one of the founding members of Skull and Bones. And, you know, legend has it that Prescott Bush was the guy that stole Cochise's skull out of a Native American burial ground. And it's with that skull that they drink this vile liquid, which is probably a combination of semen and blood and who knows what else, right? And maybe it wasn't Cochise's skull, but that's the rumor. And it was Prescott Bush who led the party, right? He went into sacred Indian ground, man. He went into the burial grounds and he snatched up a skull that they think is Cochise's skull. That's his father. And his father helps kickstart the Nazis and the rise of the Third Reich. It's through Prescott Bush, Brown Harriman, you know, Brown Harriman being the financing for a lot of the industrialization of the Third Reich. And it's right there. It's right in Bush's wheelhouse, right? And he's some sort of fighter pilot for World War II, a hero. What did he do? He probably did laps. You know, just like his son, he did laps, you know, maybe around the ship. You know, George Bush didn't do anything. He was in the Texas Air National Guard, because we know here in Texas that we're always under some kind of, you know, imminent threat and danger of planes that are coming into our airspace. So it's really important to be prepared. He also signed the Rio Accord, the Agenda 21. You know, he put his pen on a piece of paper. That was one of the last things he did, by the way. That was in June of 1992. He signed the Immigration Act into effect. You know, so all the immigration mess that we have in the country today, we can thank George Bush for that. He covered up the Franklin affair. And the Franklin affair being kids, boys, being snatched out of Boys Town in Omaha, Nebraska. Covered it up. There's all, I mean, we could just go on and on and on. And he did most of this within 4 years. Of course, he was running the Reagan White House after Reagan got plunked by what? The son of his buddy, right? Hinckley, John David Hinckley. I mean, that was a friend of, which Bush was it? Was it Neil? The other one. There was like the son that hasn't gotten into politics. Anyway, the Hinckleys knew the Bushes. And meanwhile, you know, what are we getting now? We're getting this pablum that he was, I want to be remembered as a good father and as a good husband and as a good grandfather. And this is all we're getting now. What a family man he was. You know, when he wasn't, you know, hanging out with Aleister Crowley's daughter, he was terrorizing MK Ultra mind control victims like Kathy O'Brien and her daughter, right? Read Kathy O'Brien. George Bush plays a prominent role in that book, along with Dick Cheney. I mean, it's all out there. It is all out there. And this is why we live in a controlled matrix theater, because we get this version of reality, which is completely fallacious. And not only is it fallacious, but it's in some ways, it's beyond toxic. It is beyond toxic. And it's like toxic is pretty bad, but it's beyond toxic, because what it does is it seals, right? It seals his place in history as being this kind of benevolent, patron, this benevolent patron, who dedicated his life to service. Right. Go all the way back to the CIA and the Kennedy assassination. There were fingerprints there with that. I mean, so anyway, I'm watching this stuff and I'm trying not to. I'm just trying not to. And it's interesting how people are reacting to this. I read it. So I had a funny psychic moment today with a guy by the name of Mark. Mark Trueblood. He's a good friend over on Facebook. And Mark is pretty switched on politically. He's a Capricorn. He's also a designer. Great guy. Anyway, I was on Twitter and I saw that, what's his name? Mike Cernovich had a tweet that was lauding the life of George H.W. Bush. Are you kidding me? Mike Cernovich, who's supposed to be like this alt-right warrior, you know, he's basically bootlicking Bush and the Bush family. I couldn't believe it, right? And so I'm having this thought. I'm like, oh, gee, I wonder what Mark would think about this. You know, maybe I should text him. And sure enough, within like 5 seconds, Mark is on my Facebook IM, and he's basically bringing up this Mike Cernovich tweet. And so we're having this like psychic moment. It was very interesting. And this is how the world works, really. You know, when we pull away these layers, that's really who we are. You know, we're able to communicate, you know, through space and time, you know, and we're like, it's like a quantum entanglement, right? It's exactly what's happening. We were quantumly entangled in that moment. So anyway, it's fascinating to watch how people are, you know, basically, pardon my language, tripping over their dicks in order to, you know, praise this guy who was really just the head of a crime family. In most politics, which we've already discussed, you know, ad infinitum, politics is basically gangs. It's gangs with suits and then, you know, letters, you know, after one's name, whatever it is, right? Whatever it is. So politics is just gangs with suits and ties in some basic level of accreditation. And the Bush family is clearly one of those families. It's a crime family. Bottom line, end of story. So we're going to look at some of the Bush charts tonight. And I also found something very, very interesting. I found a code that has to do with every president. Well, okay, let me rephrase this. Every president, with the exception of Reagan, since Jimmy Carter, has a thread that connects each and every one of them. Okay, every one of them has a thread. We're going to get into that tonight, and it's going to be eye-opening, to say the least. Now, there are some people, by the way, who think that when Reagan was shot, that he actually really did die. Like Reagan was gone after that, and whatever we saw after that was part of the you know, came off the Robotoid assembly line and allowed George H.W. Bush to basically run the country from that point forward. And there are people who have really followed this stuff, and I haven't broken down like Reagan pre-assassination and Reagan post-assassination, but apparently there was a very different kind of vector to like policy afterwards. And then, of course, Jim Brady was a part of that. And Jim Brady got like 3 slugs to the head. How do you not die if you get 3 slugs to the head? I mean, come on. That's like, you know, 3 slugs. That's like you splattering your brains all over. I mean, maybe one goes this way. I don't know, you know, I'm sure sometimes it happens. But Jim Brady has 3 slugs to the brain, and he becomes this kind of walking, semi-talking poster child for the Brady Bill, which is it's the beginning of the anti-gun laws. And, you know, he's always trotted out, you know, anytime they needed somebody to, you know, be a symbol for taking guns away, well, there was Jim Brady, right? Was that really Jim Brady? Or was that yet another one of these, you know, kind of robotoids that rolled off of the assembly line at Camp David, right? Anyway, let me check with you guys in the chat room and see what's going on here. Let's see, we got clowns initiating atrocities. Transformation of America. Yep, that's Kathy O'Brien. Beyond Astrology with Heather. Oh yeah, she is a good astrologer. Absolutely. What else do we have? All these creatures are related. Yes, they are related. Let's see, Haven, Omaha, Franklin, Larry King, Paul Bonacci, Johnny Gosch. Yep, absolutely. Johnny Gosch becomes James, what's his name? James Guckert and Jeff Gannon, who plays a role in the Bush II presidency. There's JMP Love. Hello, hello. What else do we have here? David Icke was outing Daddy Bush as a pedo 20 years ago. It was never sued for defamation. Yeah, well, you know, Kathy O'Brien has never sued either, is she? And Kathy O'Brien names names like crazy. Totally. They're all related to the family, 13 families that run the world. There's something else. You guys are hitting things very, very close. There's something else. There's a code that I'm going to reveal tonight. Robert, you're taking no prisoners. No, I mean, come on. Let's be real about this stuff, right? Just for as much as we can, to the best of our abilities. Let me just do this. What do you think? I was thinking about this. What do you, let's say Trump died in less than 10 years, right? What would his legacy be? You think people would treat him as kindly and gently as George H.W. Bush? Right? Would they eulogize him with high praise and talk about what a good father he was to Ivanka, and Dawn, and Eric? I don't think so. I don't think that's happening. Let me get this up here. Give me 1 second. Okay, I'm just lining up all the charts. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get into the chart of the moment. We're going to do some screen share. Let me close my my fantasy football results. That would be, I think, a good thing to do. Okay, so let's get into this. Let's get into the chart of the moment, and we'll just look at where things are. We'll get our bearings. There we go. There we go. Let's do this. I guess I always have to do this. I always have to change my coordinates. Give me 1 sec here. We'll get this together. We'll get it together. Modifying data. Modifying reference place. Reference place modified. Reference place modified, check. Initiating chart of the moment. There you go. It's just, I do this because I have my chart, and it's, you know, it's Verdun, France, which is where I was born. So we're going to look at the chart of the moment. Let's see if I can, yeah, it's going to be right there. But in order to do this correctly, I'm not living in Verdun. I'm actually living in Texas. All right, what's that? That's it. Okay, so I'm going to get into some share screen with y'all. Let's do that. There we go. There's some screen shareage. This is our friend, the chart of the moment, right there. So as the crow flies, the chart of the moment, Sunday, December 2nd, we have Cancer rising. We were talking about that. You know, last week we went into this whole piece around Cancer and the true note. I have more thoughts about that tonight, by the way. And I was talking with about this with Regina on Friday before we shut this down. And I've talked about this before as it relates to the fourth turning, with the true node in Cancer really being sort of the beginning, with the south node in Capricorn, the beginning of the fourth turning. Because in the fourth turning, there is this collapse of governmental structures, hierarchical structures, and people beginning to have less interest in them. So that would line up with the south node in Capricorn. And as we move into the true node in Capricorn, which is kind of the true north of where everything is going, there is a return to locality, like where you live, what's around you. And that's also part of the fourth turning, and that people will become more involved at a local level. They'll find more sustenance at a local level. You know, I think this is starting to take shape. People are, you know, beginning to really rethink their lives inside of cities. And yeah, I don't want to get into I don't want to get into California, but anyway, this is where the action is with the true node, because it represents kind of this iteration or manifestation of the fourth turning. We can see it. It's happening right now. And with the South Node in Capricorn, we're going to be able to see the beginning of the collapse, right? The beginning of the collapse. And I mean, it's already, the momentum has been there. I mean, our government has always been borderline functional, dysfunctional, because governments aren't really supposed to work. They're not, because they're always supposed to be fixing things, but they never really get fixed. So what happens with governments is that they just keep tapping into the tax base, right? We got Pellet Rock. Thanks, Pellet Rock, for being a new subscriber. And so what happens then, right, is now government isn't just, it's not just dysfunctional in a way that it was functional at one point in time. Like it kind of like always sort of perpetuated itself. Well, that's not happening anymore. And what we're seeing is more and more dysfunctionality, really open dysfunctionality. And I've talked about this in terms of Trump, and how Trump is ironically one of the most transparent presidents we've ever had because of what's been taking place, right? You know, whether it's this kind of, you know, driver of chaos with his Sun Uranus conjunction, or, you know, kind of just where we are, that he's the, you know, he's the right man for the time, or the wrong man for the time, depending on how you want to look at him. But we're seeing incredible amounts of, like, you know, we're seeing what's behind the curtain more and more and more. And some of it is sort of consciously being drawn to our attention, and some of it is a real function of just this ensuing chaos that's taking place. And the entropy that results with that. We're moving into a place of entropy, because at some point, this is going to get rebuilt again. At some point, we will return to the first turning. There's 4 turnings, and we're in the 4th turning now. So when we return to the first turning, we've got to go through what we're going through now. And the true node in Cancer is the beginning of that movement where people are turning away from these sort of, you know, oligarchic and corporocratic structures, even though the corporocratic structures are doing everything in their power to gain more power and acquire more power. Ultimately, it's going to be, I think it's going to be a losing effort on their part. That's just my 2 cents. Like, I don't think they can keep the game going. Even if they do some kind of a reset, I don't think they can keep the game going. All right, so here we are. We've got the ascendant right now in Cancer. So, you know, part of this experience that we're sharing together tonight has to do with empathy, feeling, compassion, you know, talking about things that matter, talking about things that are real, talking about things that have kind of emotional content and merit. And it's been this way now for the past couple of Sundays when we've signed on to do the live stream. We've got Sun in Sagittarius right there, 10 degrees. It passed Jupiter. Sun and Jupiter were conjunct at 3 degrees on the 26th. And that was, I think that's the last time they'll be conjunct, if I'm not mistaken. And maybe they'll be, no, I don't think so, because by the time we hit, like, well, I think they're conjunct one more time next year. We'll have a look at it. Usually there's only one conjunction of the Sun and Jupiter per year, although this is a late sort of movement of Jupiter. It goes into December. So anyway, we've got the Sun in Sag, and it's getting very close, right? It's getting very, very close to that square with Neptune. It's going to be interesting because Wednesday is his day of mourning. You know, this is what Trump has rolled out. It's going to be this day of mourning. And the day of mourning is going to coincide with the Neptune Sun square. It's going to be very interesting, right? Because we're going to be fed yet, you know, more fountains of bullshit. You know, we'll be drowning in bullshit or bullshit. And we're going to have the Sun Neptune square. And it's going to be fascinating to see how people kind of respond to this lionization of this man. And I wonder if there's going to be some people that have quote unquote bad manners. You know, when Margaret Thatcher died, you know, there were people who didn't waste any time in trashing Margaret Thatcher. And it was, you know, I think it was probably one of the most openly aggressive postmortems on a public figure that I've seen in a long time. It'll be interesting to see what happens. All this stuff had happened, like like millennials. I was talking with this millennial gal last night. She had no idea what went on with the Gulf War. This is President G.H.W. Bush, to some people, might as well be Franklin Delano Roosevelt. That's how far back and removed from people's consciousness he is, unless of course you're, my age or somewhat younger, or someone you'll understand who this guy is and was, right? But he's been able to sort of, kind of move through this slipstream of time and history. And I think the only characters now who will have some kind of historical context and purpose / resonance are basically going to be like Hillary, not even Bill Clinton, by the way, not even Bill Clinton, but Hillary, Obama, and Trump. These are going to be the three, people that have a kind of historical context moving forward. Even George W. Bush, another guy who was up to his third eye in crime and basically lying to the American people, oversaw 9/11. He'll get a pass too, because most millennials and people after the millennials, they won't know who he is or what he did. It's really only going to be Obama, Hillary, and Trump. These are the historical personae moving forward, and what we judge presidents from that point on. This is the way it is, right? So when we get this Sun-Neptune square coming up, and it'll happen right around the same time as this day of mourning, it's going to be very interesting. It'll be very interesting because on the one hand, we're going to get all kinds of illusion, and this is what happens with the Sun-Neptune square. This energy, which is going to be Sagittarius, sort of, it's all about theoretically the truth, right? And expanding and expounding upon, these kinds of, great ideas or these great pronouncements, which is very Sagittarian. It's squaring off against Neptune. And so it's going, the rooms are going to be filled with hot air, just emanating right out of the TV screens, right? That's going to be the Sun-Neptune square. But somewhere in that mix, if people are paying attention, they'll understand that it's bullshit. It's going to be a very interesting time because of the Sun-Neptune square. That's not the only thing. I mean, obviously, we've got this day of mourning that's coming up. That's going to be, 3 days from now? So it's going to be, we got the 3rd Monday, 4th Tuesday, and 5th is going to be Wednesday. So it's 12/5. Jupiter is going to start to move again by the time we convene next week. Jupiter is going to be at about 9 degrees, 10 degrees. It too is going to be in square with Neptune. So we're going to have a Sun, Neptune square, Jupiter, Neptune square. Things are not as they seem. The hype, the propaganda, whatever kind of potential false flag, whatever's going to happen between now and really the next 2 weeks, it's going to be, again, one of these situations where you shouldn't believe everything you see. You shouldn't believe everything you hear, and don't take it on face value, right? This is where we're headed now. We're headed into essentially a fog bank with a lot of hype, a fog bank with a lot of hyperbole, which is long term for hype, a fog bank that has a lot of just hot air. It's like gaseous. It's like it's the nature of Jupiter itself. And you just my prescription is turn your TV off, unless you want to figure it out. So when you put your high beams on and kind of see where people are with certain things, maybe it would be worthwhile. But I just think we're going to be swimming in this thick pool of illusion over the next couple of weeks. On a personal level, I think it could be perhaps it can be instructive and enlightening on a personal level. And I'll tell you where I'm coming from with this. Is if we have a certain layer of illusion or a certain layer of bullshit or stories that we tell ourselves, that this square with the sun to Neptune and Jupiter to Neptune could potentially bring that out. Like there's just more of it, right? So there could be something constructive about this as it relates to our own patterns, as it relates to our own inner workings and psychological mechanisms. It could be a really good time to clear some of that out, right? I think that's a constructive kind of way to deal with this energy. We've got the moon in Libra tonight, which I tend to like. I've got a Libra moon. Right now it's floating around the 3rd house. By the time you get up tomorrow, that moon is still going to be in Libra. It's going to be in the latter degrees of Libra, probably around like 25, 26 degrees. So tomorrow, you know, when you go to work or do whatever you do, that moon is getting closer and closer to that opposition with Uranus. The moon in Libra wants to be fair, wants to be just, and wants to be kind, and wants to be diplomatic. And Uranus says, you know, the hell with that bullshit. You know, we demand action. We demand action now. We demand answers. We demand answers now. You know, we demand that, you know, something happens, something quick happens, something vital happens, something important happens. It's the activation of will. You know, and you may go into tomorrow thinking, okay, I've got everything, you know, balanced, planned out, and you might go through a series of disturbances, you know, tomorrow, and have to really kind of rebalance this energy. You know, the moon is squaring Pluto and has been for most of the day today, and will continue to at some point tomorrow. This is a very difficult time if you're going through a relationship and it's not going so well. You know, if you're dealing with things like attachments, you know, a moon Pluto square can be very difficult, super difficult, or any kind of agreement that you have with another person. You know, that's also a very challenging aspect because moon Pluto squares it's like wanting to hold on, not letting go, you know, working through fears around what it is to have to give something up, you know, with the moon, you know, some level of connection or some level of contract, and agreement. Venus has just moved back into Scorpio. So it's in roughly about a week, it's going to get up to where it was before it went retrograde at 9 degrees. And yeah, it's technically in opposition with Uranus as well. So this is, you know, this is an interesting and not an easy time for emotions and relationships. It's not sudden changes and ones that you have to kind of really work through. But Venus is, you know, it's moving on, and it's going to get closer and closer to a trine with Neptune, and that's good. We like that. Venus-Neptune trines can, you know, especially going through a phase like now, you know, Venus-Neptune trine can be kind of resettling. There's a kind of a period of more emotional harmonization, being able to move into kind of a place of forgiveness. You know, Scorpio always has this quality of aftermath to it. And Venus in Scorpio is, you know, it's going to be here for another 30 degrees. So it's kind of, you know, it's going to be kind of a time where maybe you can rebuild some things or rebuild some vital connections that might have taken a blow during the retrograde phase. What else do we have? We've got this Mars-Neptune conjunction. Yeah, that's going to happen in what, like 5 days? That's a tricky conjunction. That Mars-Neptune conjunction, that's got like false flag written all over it. That's got like some kind of gun deal written all over it. It just does. It just like Mars is going to be, you know, Mars is always martial. It's about energy and action. And here, you know, conjunct Neptune, it's unclear. It's just totally unclear. We've got a Sun-Mars square right now. Yeah, that's interesting. You know, in a chart, in a natal chart, people who have Sun-Mars squares are battlers. They're battlers, they're warriors. Sometimes it's not always in their own best interest, but you know, that's fighting energy, Sun-Mars square. So there's some of that in the air, but in Pisces, it's not like it's a Sun-Mars square in Aries, you know. Mars in Pisces tends to be not really direct. It's not quite passive aggressive, but it's not quite direct. And we've got Pluto sextiling Neptune, and then Saturn at 8 degrees, and that is in sextile with Mars. And that Saturn's actually one of the stabilizing influences in this chart. You see this? I mean, Saturn is, we've got the trine to Uranus and the sextiles to Mars, Neptune. Saturn's what's holding this chart together right now. If we didn't have Saturn there, it would just be a bloody mess, wouldn't it? Just be a bloody mess. So Saturn's all about, really grounding, getting solid, staying, 1 foot in front of the other, making sure you're doing what you need to do every day to get things done. One step up the pyramid at a time. And there's some decent energy here. The sextile to Neptune is about kind of reaching. Sextiles are things that we activate. Unlike trines, which are easy, sextiles, you need to get engaged with them. There's a catalytic kind of quality to sextiles. So a Saturn-Neptune sextile would be activating some level of very deep and kind of mature compassion, like taking the high road, being the quote-unquote adult. And then the sextile to Mars is being able to pace yourself and have some level of endurance, even though, Mars and Pisces conjunct Neptune, you don't want to overwork things. This is not a time to work your ass off, I'm telling you. Work in short, focused bursts, over the course of the next week. Do not push yourself. I don't care where Mars or Neptune is lining up in your chart. You don't want to push yourself. You want to work steady. You want to be able to pace yourself, take breaks. That's going to be the key here over the course of the next few days. And then the trine to Uranus, that's going to, that has to do with incorporating what's new coming into your life with what you know, what you understand, what you've been doing for all these years. So this is actually pretty good energy. We're going to be dealing with that Uranus-Saturn trine for a while. So I think big picture wise, even though we're going through a very chaotic spin, that Saturn-Uranus trine allows us to incorporate it because Uranus is chaos and Saturn represents discipline and structure and patterns that we've hopefully developed that are in our best interest. Right? Okay. Let me check in with Chat City here. Let's see what you guys are rapping about inside the chat. What do we have here? Swimming in sea. I had a dream about a large tractor trailer submerged in water, but still operating. That's sort of an image of Mars conjunct. That's actually a really good image. Absolutely. Let's see. Akai TV says GW Bush, Reptiliano Supreme. Let's see, what else do we have here? A bunch of bullshit. Expanding steam fog. And Black Market Medicine says, I'd say yes, and keep that engine running. Okay. Oh, look at that. All right. We got the old. Okay. Let me get back to, let's get out of the Hall of Mirrors here, shall we? Hold on. Give me 1 second. Let's go back to the chart. Where are we here? Nope, not that. It's the chart of the moment. We've got so many charts up right now. I think it's right here. Is that it? Nope, that's not it. Where are we going? We're spinning round and round. Let's stop the screen share. I think that would be helpful. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to look at a couple of charts, and they're all going to be tonight. They're all going to be presidential charts. That's going to be the key with this stuff. So one of the first charts I wanted to bring up is, let me find this thing. Oh, so check this out. I don't know if you guys were in on the conversation that Randy and Emily and I had maybe about a month ago. And it was all about the secret space program. Anyway, we had this idea for the secret space pussy program, which was about cats. And so we decided that we're going to do t-shirts with the secret space pussy program, so that you guys, if you want to, can buy a secret space pussy program t-shirt. You guys want to see the illustration that you can get on your t-shirt? You want to check that out for a second? I can break it to you live. You want to check it out? All right, hi Lori, I'm gonna screen share this. So we're gonna have these, probably in black t-shirt and white t-shirt. Imagine that. So let me share this with you guys. We get a kick out of this. So here we go. This is the Secret Space Pussy program. And it's kind of a take on the Secret Space program. We were talking about how cats are from, like, what is it, the Pleiades, right? So there it is. It's the SSPP. So we're gonna have these T-shirts for sale, and we're gonna have them in white and in black. You see, there's Jasper. He's at the front, right? He's got his ray gun right there, his Ronald ray gun. Zap. So these are going to be in production, and if you guys want one, you'll be able to get one through either me or through Off Planet Radio. Like I said, we'll have them, I think, in black and white. So I'm not sure how we're going to do the size stuff yet. This is all new. This is all new to me, but I thought I'd just share that with you guys. What do you think of the image? Do you guys like the image? Are you into the image? Let me see if I can find you. Are you into the image? I'm not going to psychoanalyze that too much. No, she loves it. I channel a Syrian lion man. Close enough. Kathy says, great background. No, it's just the Secret Space Pussy program, man. It all happened one night on Off Planet. We're going to have those if you're into it. Okay. So what I wanted to do now is I wanted to see if I can find some of this Bush stuff here. Let's see. Okay. So one of the things I wanted to look at was I wanted to look at some Bush charts. And this chart is connected to the first Gulf War. It's right here. You guys can see this. Okay. So what we have here is we have the Gulf War started on the 16th of January, 1991, which I believe, if I'm not mistaken, is Martin Luther King's birthday. And I had a very powerful experience that day. So let's look at Bush's chart for a second. He's on the inner ring. So he's a Leo rising with his true node right here on the ascendant. You know, I'm also going to show you another chart of Bush, and you're going to see it looks like it's his death chart. Okay, so the Gulf War started. What do we have here? Hold on. Okay, good. We got this. So the Gulf War started at about 3 a.m. on the 16th of January, and it was 1991. And I'll never forget that day. I'll never forget it. Woke up and they're already pounding the Iraqis. And by the way, the airstrikes on Iraq were considered one of the most intense and lethal series of airstrikes in the history of war. Wrap your head around that. More so than what happened in Japan, or Germany, or even Vietnam. What they unleashed on the Iraqis was heavy duty, hardcore. So this is Bush's chart. He's got that true node in Leo on the ascendant. Remember that. That's a really key and important thing to understand here as we move forward. He's got his sun right here in Gemini, 10th house, but it's ingressing. It's ingressing into the 11th house. And of course, Bush is the big, he's the errand boy for the New World Order, which to me is really kind of an 11th house experience. So he's got Pluto here in the 11th house. And, that's like transforming group experience. He's got a Venus-Pluto conjunction in Cancer, all signs. It's transforming group experience. Okay, so got some oppositions taking place. We'll get into those. If we go to the top of the chart, here is Mars, and Mars is at 29 Taurus. By the time we move into that day, not starting at the end of at the 3 a.m. spot, but as we move into that day, Mars will move into Gemini. It'll move into Gemini by the end of that day. So what we have here is we have Mars right at the top of his chart, right? And here's Mercury. He's got Mercury in Taurus. So Bush has Mercury, and he's got Mercury at, let's see, what is that? Mercury at 29. So we have an exact conjunction between Mars at 29 and Mercury at 29. So essentially what he's doing is he's triggering the war, right? He's saying, you know, everybody start your engines, let's go. And it's his Mercury at that 29th degree of Taurus, which is inciting and initiating Mars at 3 a.m. Like he's giving the go sign, right? So by the time we move into the day itself, Mars will move into Gemini, and things happen very quickly with Mars and Gemini. What we also have is we have a Mars-Mars square. Over here, transiting Mars happens to be in, or actually Bush's Mars happens to be in the sign of Aquarius. And what, that's at 25 degrees, right? So here's you know, his kind of volitional push for the quote unquote New World Order, which is theoretically is kind of, you know, dark Aquarian age, you know, if we really want to break it down. So we have a Mars-Mars square going on. This is extreme violence, right? Very, very violent. And here, he's got Mars conjunct his descendant in Aquarius. Mars in Aquarius, I tell you right now, you know, Mars in Aquarius can be really scientific, can be really forward thinking, it can be very experimental. I can tell you Mars in Aquarius can also be very cruel. There's a cruelty to Mars in Aquarius, right? Because Aquarius can be so sort of, you know, detached, so scientific, so removed from, you know, Earth in a lot of ways, right? And we have Mars in that sign, and it's like, it sets up this energy that isn't always, you know, all that compassionate, to be quite honest with you. And in relationship, right, there's the potential for it to be quite cruel. You know, Mars and air signs can be challenging. Mars and Gemini is certainly challenging. You know, it's, first of all, it's always got to be in movement. It's always moving, never stops. And when you get into Gemini, there's that duality effect. And it's, you know, it can be a bit devilish in Mars and Gemini. I'm just saying. And Mars and Aquarius can be, I believe, Mars and Aquarius, unless it's anchored or has some really decent aspects to it, I think Mars and Aquarius can be sociopathic, to be honest with you. Really can. And that's not to say that everybody with Mars and Aquarius has it, right? But here, what is Mars in Aquarius doing inside of his chart? Not a whole lot, to be quite honest with you, right? We've got the opposition. His south node is over here. It's also in Aquarius. And this is a guy that, you know, he doesn't play well with other people. He's into himself. He's into his own thing. Okay, so check this out down here. These are all, look at all this Capricorn. Holy crap. We've got a new moon. They started this war on a new freaking moon. Of course they would, because of the cover, right? Most wars are started on the dark of night on a new moon so that people don't see anything. Looks like we got some eclipse action here too, huh? Check that out. So we've got all this taking place, right? All this taking place. We've got the Sun-Saturn conjunction. Like, this is the assemblage. This is the coalition of the willing with all these planets in Capricorn. This is a time you'd want to start a war, especially if you wanted to create a freaking new world order. Look at all this Capricorn that's going on, right? And what's it doing? For the most part, it's going right into this trine with Mercury. So with his Mercury on, you know, in the 10th house, his 10th house. Here it's on the descendant. We have two Marses on the descendant for each of these charts, which is aggression towards the other, correct? On both these aspects here, or both parts of these charts, cardinal points. But he's orchestrating this. Mercury plays the role of the composer. He's orchestrating everything. He's leading the charge with his Mercury, with this bevy of Capricornian planets. Very intense. Very, very, very intense. I remember Bush during this period and phase, and he was, you could watch him. He was just growing. He was growing. He was expanding. I was, by the way, the Gulf War is really the birth of the 24/7 news cycle. It's when it starts. CNN really, hits the ground running with the Gulf War. People are glued to the TV. I wanted to find out what was going on. And I watched Bush. I watched him transform, and he became this immensely powerful figure. It was almost like he was feeding off the war itself. And then there's a change in Bush. There's a serious change. And I'll never forget when he started to walk down this gangplank off of a plane. I think it might have been in Riyadh or someplace like that. And he was completely, like, almost vegetative. That was right around the time that George Green told me he was a clone. Here's Pluto right here, down at the bottom of the chart. You see that? Right at his IC, home where he lives. And now we've got this inconjunct going from Pluto to the sun. Like he does not know what hell he brings or what wrath he wrought into or brought into this world with that Pluto inconjunct to the sun. This is a heavy, heavy aspect. This is death, right? This is death. And this is the consequences. This is the consequences, but they're not fully realized. Well, they'll be realized later, trust me. It's right here, right? This is the immense responsibility for channeling Pluto on a global level. And that's what he's doing. He's channeling Pluto on a global level. He's bringing Pluto into the world, right? One of the other names that they bandied about for Pluto when Pluto was discovered was Hades. He's bringing Hades into the world in a way that he may not even really be fully aware of. We've got a Venus-Neptune opposition here. Oh, here's that lovely Venus in Aquarius. Oh, yes, the coalition of the willing, the new world order, right? This is this global kumbaya moment where everybody chimes in to go pound Saddam Hussein into the sand. But we've got an opposition here with Neptune. Not everything is as it seems with the Neptune opposition to Venus. But clearly, this day was chosen. Of course, we've got a new moon. We've got the coalition of the willing, the assemblage of Saturn. This is Saturn's army right here. And look, he's orchestrated it. He's orchestrated it right on that Mars, right to the top of the chart. This is a pretty interesting chart, if you ask me. Very interesting chart. There's a Jupiter trine going on as well. He's got this Jupiter and Sag. This was the expansive moment. This is how I saw him expanding. He was having a Jupiter trine. Jupiter, for the most part, being his 12th house during this period. Of course, he would be expansive, right? He was stepping into his role as, guess what? A king. That's the nature of Leo, okay? That's the nature of Leo. So I looked at this, I'm thinking, okay, well, he's a Gemini sun, but he's Leo rising, and he's got his true node in Leo over there in the ascendant. Huh, fascinating. And then things began to click in my head. Things began to click. And what began to click for me is this code that I wanted to share with you guys, that every president, with the exception of Reagan, has some from Carter all the way through to Trump. Every president has a strong connection with the sign of Leo, which makes them kings, right? That in some way, shape, or form, their connection to Leo qualifies them to take the mantle of president of the United States. Let's go through a few of them, okay? I'll share it with you. So I'm going to stop the share here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put up because I was wondering, like, Jimmy Carter did not seem all that Leo, right? Let me find him. Hold on one sec. Here we go. So to me, Jimmy Carter didn't really seem all that Leo. Well, then I had to look at his chart, and guess what? Okay, he's Libra rising, Libra sun in the 12th house. 12th house, sons, I don't think are great for being presidents. I mean, even with G.W. Bush, you'll see that his son is in the 12th house. So he's a Libra sun, he's a double Libra, right? Scorpio moon, Saturn on the ascendant. That makes total sense. Being president was not easy for Jimmy Carter. But how does a peanut farmer, right? How does a peanut farmer from Georgia become president? It's not, and we know that it's not the will of the people by and large. It's just not, right? Jimmy Carter was chosen, and he was chosen by the Trilateral Commission, to be president of the United States. Well, why? Well, check this out. He's got Venus in Leo, Neptune in Leo, and there's that true node again. Just like George Bush had true node in Leo on the ascendant, Carter has it in the 10th house. And his 10th house is predominantly Leo. Even though he's got this 28-degree Cancer midheaven, there's Leo there. Hello, right there. It gives him, in some ways, right, it gives him the pedigree, the bona fide, to take the role of president. Fascinating. Okay, so we know that he's got the Leo connection, the connection to the kings. Okay. Well, who's after Carter? Well, Reagan. Reagan doesn't have any Leo in his chart, but he also, I'm also not sure Reagan was around for the entirety of his presidency. I'm just throwing that out there. So we talked about Bush. We know that Bush has got that Leo rising, right? And the true node also in Leo in the first house. So who follows? Just 1 second here. Who follows Daddy Bush as president? Well, it's his most favored non-biological son, Bill Clinton. And hallelujah, what do we have here? There's Leo again. Sun in Leo, right there. He's got Mercury also in Leo, and Saturn in Leo as well. Pluto in Leo. A lot of responsibility. Cancer on the midheaven. Just like Carter, who was from the South, Clinton from the South, they have those Cancerian midheavens. Aw shucks, gee golly, yes ma'am. That folksy kind of vibe. That's Cancer on the midheaven. But he's got Leo. He's got Leo up the yin yang. And of course, he's got that Mars, Venus, Neptune conjunction in Libra. It's kind of charismatic, especially when it sextiles into Mercury and Saturn. And he's got that Uranus, Jupiter trine. Clinton sort of broke the mold. He was a very different kind of president. Clinton, for all intents and purposes, is the first baby boomer that's elected as president. So he's got that trine to Uranus in the chart, and it makes him different. Maybe he's playing freaking saxophone on the Arsenio Hall show, right? But he also has issues. He also has problems. We know that. That's that moon in Taurus in the 8th house, the hidden connection. Who else has moon in Taurus is what's her name? Monica Lewinsky. She has moon in Taurus too. They were into each other. He was into her, even if she was probably a spy in the House of Love. He was into her. And you've got the square, the obsessiveness with the moon Pluto square and the sun moon square. This is the sun moon square, I think, is the change to Hillary, if you ask me. Anyway, there's the Leo. It's right there. Okay, so you've seen that with Bill Clinton. Okay, well, who else do we have? Who else is president of the United States? Well, let's see. Let's see what we got here. so I can find the chart that I'm looking for. Give me 1 second. Okay, there's this one. What is this? There's this one, right? And then hold on. Almost there. Oh, hold on a second. I don't want her. Let's do this. Let's see. Let's just do this right here. Click this bad boy. Yeah, that'll work. So we'll share screenage again. And the next president, of course, is George W. Bush. Well, look at what we have here. Look at his rising sign. Leo, right? You see the pattern? Can you see the pattern? People who get elected president, basically from Carter on, with the exception of Reagan, they've got this strong connection with Leo. Mercury in Leo, Pluto in Leo, Venus in Leo. And then we have Saturn, Sun in the 12th house. It's a terrible aspect for a president, to be honest with you. But he's not afraid to go to war, is he? He's not afraid to get into that Aries midheaven. You know, he starts, you know, basically George W. Bush starts the war without end. That's what he does. We're still fighting the wars that he initiated on the heels of 9/11 and the Patriot Act. He's got that Uranus true node conjunction like Trump does. You know, they're not born that far apart, believe it or not. They're right around the same age. In fact, I think Trump was born about a month before George Bush, right? And like his old man, he's got, you know, Libra. His old man had moon in Libra, and his old man had moon Saturn in Libra. He's got moon Jupiter in Libra. You know, you find that with fathers and sons and mothers and daughters. The moon aspect can be carried over quite often. I've got a Libra moon. My son has a Libra moon. This happens all the time. You can see this. It's part of the family connection and lineage with astrology, the emotional content. You know, I think he's weak. This is a weak man. He's a weak man. He's got a sun Neptune square, moon Jupiter square the sun, hiding out. You know, where was he when 9/11 happened? Apparently, he was hiding out. He was scared shitless. You know, did he really think that 9/11 was going to go in the direction he thought it would? I don't know. The other thing that's interesting about this chart is that when Bush was president, there always seemed to be two Bushes. You know, there was the golly gee gosh, you know, shucks Bush, you know, the one who was like kind of, you know, very naive and patted bald people on the head. That was weird. But then there was also like this other guy who was like fucking cruel, right? You just he had that kind of maniacal kind of grin, and it was, you know, Bush always reminded me of that episode in Star Trek where Kirk goes through the transporter and he's split into two Kirks, and one is just like this vicious psychopath, and the other is like really meek and mild, and they need to be integrated, right? He's got to go back through the transporter so he can, you know, have his edge, but, you know, still have some self-control. That's what Bush reminded me of. But anyway, there it is. You know, Leo rising. More Leo. More Leo. Well, guess what? Guess who else has some Leo in their charts? Well, what do we have here? Well, this is one of the more controversial charts because we're not even really sure if it's his chart, but let's just go with it. Oh, it's Barack Obama. Guess what? He's a Leo. Leo with Sun Uranus conjunction. There's the true node. Who else has a Sun Uranus conjunction? Donald Trump, right? That's why, but there it is. Mr. Leo. Now, I tend to think that this might be close to his rising sign, but I always felt like that Obama might have been more of a Scorpio rising with Neptune in his first house because of the projection. There was so much projection going on with Obama, tons of projection. In fact, the first chart that I saw was one that was done by Lois Roden, and she had him as a Neptune or a Scorpio rising with Neptune on in the first house and close to the first house cusp. That actually makes sense for me, right? Because if he's a Scorpio rising, let's see, so it's going to move 1, 2, basically 3 signs, right? That means his sun would go 1, 2, 3, puts his sun right up around the 9th, 10th house. I'd have to look at the exact figures. That feels more right to me than sort of all this sort of 7th house material. Now, clearly Neptune is the highest planet in this chart, so it would take on a degree of significance. And while it's not the same thing as Neptune rising, it would again bring up this kind of Neptunian sort of, how do I say it? This Neptunian projection onto who he is. Oh, he's great. People overseas would love him. I remember when he went to England that first, or Germany the first time. It's like a freaking rock star, Nobel Peace Prize. Maybe that's it, 9th house Neptune. In any case, Sun in Leo. You see a pattern. Can you see the pattern? It's all about kings. Kings, the lineage of kings. And of course, we have to come to our latest president, Mr. Donald John Trump. And what do we have here? Leo rising. See? So it's either Leo rising, true node in Leo, or Sun in Leo. That's it. And if you look at, so Trump has an interesting chart because he also has Regulus on the ascendant. Regulus is like, it's the fixed star of kings. It's right there on his ascendant. Like, if they're looking at Trump from an esoteric perspective, Trump was born to rule. Like he was born under the ruling star, Regulus. Regulus. He also has Antares down in his 4th house. By the way, George Bush has Regulus on his ascendant as well. You'll see that. Can you see the pattern here? Look at that. It's crazy, but it's not. By the way, we could have a little quick look in on Trump's chart. He's got Mars going through his 7th house, more conflict. Trump has been involved in intense conflict, like since the last roughly 5 to 6 months, when Mars was, in his 6th house and then retrograding, and then going back through his 6th house, open enemies right and left, right and left. It's going to be interesting to see what happens when he goes into his 8th house. And he's going to have, this is going to be right after the first of the year. Mars goes into Aries on the 2nd of January. So about a week later, he's going to have this Mars-Neptune opposition. That is when he's going to be the most vulnerable in his presidency, is this Mars-Neptune opposition. It's going to last about a week. That might be a time where they may try to go after him and try to impeach him with that Mars-Neptune opposition. He's going to be very, very vulnerable during this time. Let's see what else is going on. Now, Mars is at 10 degrees Pisces. So before it gets fully engaged with this Neptune opposition, he's going to have a Mars trine to Saturn here. That's a very interesting aspect because these are Trump's peeps. This is the 11th house. It's all Cancerian, and this is where people who have these "Make America Great Again" values. It's all Cancerian stuff. We're all hanging out here. This is where this is where the MAGA culture is. So when you get a Mars trine to Saturn, Mars trine to Venus, there's a reinforcement and a buttressing. And guess what? Here's the true node. Here's a true node going through his 11th house. There's something, I'm going to say this right now. Like, I am not fully into Trump, but I'm also not fully not into Trump. I think Trump is something of a phenomenon and something we've never seen and probably will never see again. And there's a very good chance that he will be the person that might be blamed for the collapse of the United States and the economy. That's not necessarily out of the question. But here's the weird thing about Trump. There's something oddly supernatural about Donald Trump. And we've seen this kind of almost every step of the way. Anytime somebody has like come out against him and really, you know, try to put the fire to his feet, you know, 90% of the time it comes back on them. You know, Michael Avenatti and this whole thing now with Stormy Daniels, and you know how he's cheating or ripping her off, and how his domestic partner, whatever, you know, filed charges against him. Robert De Niro, who went after him hardcore, I mean, really hardcore, and called him a punk, you know, con man, a cheat. I mean, he was really, you know, very intense with his criticism of Trump. Goes through a divorce. Kristen Gillibrand, right? She goes through her. I mean, anytime anybody has gone after Trump, the tables have turned, and they've turned in. And maybe some of it might be orchestrated, but some of it just seems to be like almost metaphysical. There's something about the energy around Trump that is fascinating, and that things happening get done almost in spite of Trump in some ways. It's really a trip. So with this true node going through his 11th house, this is where I think, you know, the sort of the strengthening or the reaffirmation of this community that he's created. And it is a community. I've never seen anything like this. There was nothing like this when, you know, George Bush was president, both George Bushes. Trump is somebody who evokes passion, either passionate love or passionate hate. That's that Gemini, Sun Gemini conjunction with Uranus, right? And that true node there. But there's going to be almost like a rearmament of the people that are into him. And I'm telling you, if Trump makes it through the next year and a half until the true node gets up here, right, in his 10th house, if he can make it through this phase, and it's not going to be easy. He's going to have stuff to deal with his children. Like, I think Donald Trump Jr. is going to wind up having to sit down in front of Mueller. You know, Donald Trump Jr., he's the Capricorn. And the South Node is going to be going through his 5th house. He's going to have stuff with his children. And maybe Ivanka, but Ivanka is like, she's protected. Trust me on this. Not protected in the same way that Trump is. There's something about Trump. And he's, you know, he's everybody I know who's ever done business with Trump says the same thing. He's an asshole. Yeah, but if you can't be a really super nice guy and do business in New York City, it just doesn't work that way, right? But there's something about him where he's kind of protected. It's almost, again, there's this supernatural thing going on. But if he can make it through this next year and a half, roughly, he'll be unstoppable. He'll have another term, because that's when, a year and a half from now, right? It's going to be moving into, this is right around the time, right around 2020, right around here. And the true node, guess what? It's at the top of this chart. He could easily get another 4 years. But he's been through one gauntlet. He made it through this gauntlet. Like when Mars was going through his 6th house, he was getting it right and left, right? Omarosa, Michael Cohen, you name it, man. People were just coming at him. Open enemy, open enemy, open enemy, open enemy. And now it's his 7th house. And he's dealing, this is going to be a little bit behind the scenes, right? Dealing with people that he's connected to, relationship, contracts, lawyers to some extent. This is interesting. I think he needs to change his lawyers. I don't think he has good representation. Anyway, and again, I'm not sitting here banging the drum. Like, I know stuff he's done, and some of it's not great, you know. But look at any president, they've all either violated or been violated. They've done stuff. You know what's interesting? Jeffrey Epstein is starting to come up now, And he's a friend of Trump's, right? He's a friend of Trump's. So he's a relationship with Epstein. They were partners, right? I think they were partners down in Mar-a-Lago, if I'm not mistaken. They did business together. Anyway, that's an interesting development, this Epstein stuff. But if he could make it through this phase right here, I would say, here's what I think too. If he makes it through this phase and he gets the South Node going down into his fourth house, I don't think Melania, could be wrong here, but if he goes up for re-election, and if he gets through this cycle, if his troubles with his children don't bring him down, he will be re-elected, but Melania won't be around. She won't be around. She'll spend more time outside of the country. Right here. Very interesting. Interesting chart. Guy's got no earth in his chart. Can you believe that? No freaking earth. For a guy that's a builder, that's Taurus on the midheaven. He's got no earth. He's not grounded. He's not grounded at all. Fascinating. Fascinating stuff. There you go. There's your Leo connection. That's the code. That is the presidential code. It has to do with Leo. Kings. All right, let me check in with you guys in the chat room, see what you're up to, see what you're doing. If there's any connection. What's going on here? Reagan had dementia. Do you mean with Neptune first house, people project? Yes, absolutely. People always project with Neptune into the first house. Celestine Orange Man prophecy. I like that. The orange prophecy. Robin says we need to collapse. We need the collapse to happen so we can move on to better things. Come on, supernatural. No, there is something supernatural about Trump. There's something that happens. I can't put my, every time somebody goes out, what would you call it? Would you call it divine justice? Anytime somebody has crossed him, something's happened to that person. Okay, how would you describe it? Would you say it's the NSA? Do you think that the NSA or the CIA or the Knights of Malta engineered Robert De Niro's divorce? Right? Yeah. Hey, Vivia D'Souza. Let's see, 737 is divine 12, 2577. He is the sword, orange sun. What else do we have here? Obama joked about Lion King footage being his birth certificate back. It's all about the lions. It's all about Leos. It's the Leo code, right? It's the code of the kings. It's all in their charts. It's all in their charts. We just saw it. The only one that didn't have it was Reagan. I'm not even sure Reagan was around. Okay, so I want to look at Bush's death chart. I thought that would be an interesting thing to do, perhaps a morbid thing to do, but I wanted to look at it to see if we can find anything of merit. Anything of merit. Give me 1 second here. Bush's death. Okay. Okay. All right. So I had to kind of guess. Hold on. Oh, wow. All right. I got to redo this thing. This is the wrong time. Give me 1 second here. 1 second. Bush. All right. Let me do this. Let's redo this thing. Give me one moment. I had the wrong time. I think he died at around, what, 10:30 at night. So let's do this. So it's death. We have, let's see, November, right? It was November, or was Friday? What was Friday? Friday was the last day of November, right? So it's like the 30th. So November 30th, 2018, 10:30 p.m. I think it was around 10:30. They said late in the night, around 10:30. And we know it was Houston, Texas. It's down the road for me. We got Houston up there. And we got Texas. Give me 1 second. Touch this thing up. Okay, so I'm going to do the synastриc chart between Bush here. Okay, so let me just, all right, I think we got it now. I think we have it. Death is on the outside. Okay. All right, so let me pop this up. All right. And so here, almost there. Do it on the fly. Oh, I guess we could use this. This will work. Right. Okay, so this is around the time of his death, and let's see if we can find anything that is representative of passing. So here we go. There's his true node, Neptune. There's Regulus. In a lot of ways, it's like Trump's chart. Have you noticed how laudatory Trump has been towards old man Bush? They have it's almost same degree rising sign Regulus, fixed star of Kings right here. Both Antares, of course, in the fourth house. So he was very close to his Jupiter return. The sun was on Antares, which is where it is pretty much right now. And then we're looking at, well, like things like Neptune and Pluto. Like, what are Neptune and Pluto doing in his chart? So Pluto is here, right? And he had actually gone through, because he has Pluto at 11 Cancer, and he had actually gone through the Pluto opposition, and that would have been like around 2011, right around 2011. So he lived theoretically, right, another 7 years after the Pluto opposition. Most people, by the way, have a very difficult time making it through the Pluto opposition. That's usually kind of a cutoff point in a lot of ways. And if you make it through the Pluto opposition, there's a pretty good chance you might hit the century mark. Well, he got to 94, whatever that form was that he was occupying at that time. But what we also have here is Saturn, which is at 7 degrees, and it's in opposition to Pluto, right? So it was Saturn-Pluto opposition. This would have happened again, guess when? Would have happened 30 years ago, which was the start of the Gulf War, right? That's what was going on. Saturn at that time, I think, was in Aquarius. But if you look at the evolution of the Gulf War, it takes 2 years. Like, the Gulf War really starts around 1989. That's when it all begins to, begin to foment and dust up. Like, if you go to my website, you look at all those magazine covers that I have that have Saddam Hussein and Bush on them. And some of those go back to 1989, and that's when Saturn was in Capricorn. That's when the Gulf War really officially starts, is Saturn in Capricorn. It's a huge time, that phase of Saturn. In 1989, we witness the fall of the wall. It's a huge time in global governance. The wall falls, and then while that's happening, China goes through its thing with Tiananmen Square, and then Bush begins to ramp up what ultimately becomes the war in Iraq. So it starts really with Saturn and Capricorn. That's when it all starts. And here we go 30 years later, and Saturn's opposing Pluto in his chart. This is where it was, in 1988, 1989, when it's all starting to, come into play, right? So it's all happening right here. He becomes president, 1988. This is when it all starts. So here it is, not quite opposite Pluto. If he had lived until, say, January, he would have had an exact opposition, which, like, I don't think he would have lived past either the Saturn-Pluto opposition and the Saturn-Pluto conjunction. I don't think he would have made it, right? So what else do we have? Well, here's Neptune. right? Neptune is right here, and it's ingressing. It is ingressing into his 8th house. It's ingressing into his 8th house is the house of death, by the way. This is Scorpio's house. So he's got Neptune ingressing. He's got Uranus here. So he's basically looking at a Neptune-Uranus conjunction. So Uranus is at, let's see, in his chart, it's at 21 Pisces. And then Neptune is at what, 17? Is that where it's at right now? Trans-Neptune is at 13. So it's not quite conjunct, but it is ingressing. It's moving towards Neptune. Chiron is here. Chiron is at 29, 27, and he's got Uranus at 21. So you know, between Chiron and Neptune is his natal Uranus. And we have the moon opposition here. Moon-Uranus opposition. So is this the slipstream in the 8th house out of the chart? Possibly. Possibly. What else? He's got, you know, died at home, right? Here we go. Mercury, Jupiter, Sun. Died at home, 4th house. What else do we have? That would be interesting to look at. What about these inconjuncts? Okay, he's got Mars over here in the 7th house. It's almost like it's a representation of his chart in some ways. Because you're dealing with, you know, early Virgo, right? Really, really early Virgo on the ascendant, late Leo on the ascendant. I wonder if he went peacefully. Let me see here. What's this Mars doing? Well, it's squaring Jupiter, which I think could be quite agitating, to be honest with you. And then he's got a Mars Jupiter square and a Jupiter Mars square. I don't think that's peaceful at all. I don't think it's peaceful at all. I think it's agitating. I don't think this man died a peaceful death. Not because Jupiter, you know, Jupiter expands things. It's expanding this kind of martial energy. It tends to be a bit aggressive. Agitating. That's the word I would use, agitating. And then we've got, so there's a Pluto square to Chiron right there. Pluto square to Chiron. Transiting Pluto, squaring his natal Chiron. His natal Chiron is at 23 Aries. Warmonger. Pluto square Chiron. You know what's really interesting? Like, do you remember when Bush was president and they said he was a wimp? He actually had this, this kind of ignominious claim to fame that he was a wimp. And then he goes down into Panama and basically, you know, wastes hundreds of Panamanians while extracting Manuel Noriega out of there. Do you think that Chiron in Aries is suggestive in some ways in his mind as being a wimp? He was, I don't know if he was a wimp, but that was one of the things they said about Bush. Anyway, Pluto, Pluto square Chiron in his chart, that's health, right? Not quite a Pluto opposition. He'd moved past that. Venus, he's got Venus at 17 Cancer. So basically a Pluto-Venus opposition. And we know that Barbara died last year, correct? This past year. So that was after the Super Bowl. So that was the death of his partner, whatever, right? Pluto-Venus opposition. Anyway, there's a death chart for you right there. If anything, I think we're looking at Saturn-Pluto opposition, Pluto square to Chiron, and this interesting ingress with Neptune into his 8th house with Uranus already there, and the lunar opposition to Uranus. This is the slipstream. All right, let me get back into you guys, see where you are in your world, what you're doing, how you're feeling, what you're experiencing. That's important to me. Let's see, he puked all over. Yeah, you know, that's interesting. That's really, you know, Kathy, okay, I was going to run a chart for that, and I didn't have time. But I actually have this theory. I have this theory that he that he actually died when he puked on that guy's lap in Japan. I think the clone expired. What did Bush Sr. mean about 1,000 points of light? That's a really good question. What do you guys think he meant by that? What do you think Bush meant by 1,000 points of light? It's got to have an esoteric or occult term, right? 1,000 points of light. I think Ike talked about it one time. Let's. There's a reference. There's a specific reference that he was connecting with. So it's supposed to be about volunteerism, but it's really not. Trump really changed his tune about 1,000 points of light is Masonic. It's about illumination. It's about illumination. So apparently there's an Illuminati Pledge of Allegiance. And here, I'll read this to you. We'll get into this together. Oh, Zen Gardner, remember him? Let's see. Let's see. So Bill Gates talks about 1,000 blossoming ideas. And let's see, let me get into this. Hold on. Coded speech, symbolic language, origins. So Peggy Noonan supposedly wrote that speech. And one of the literary references comes from C.S. Lewis's book, The Magician's Nephew. One moment there had been nothing but darkness. Next moment, 1,000 points of light leaped out. And according to this, C.S. Lewis was known to be steeped in the occult and well on board with the thrust of the Illuminist agenda. Some say it traces back to the Masonic founding fathers. As the Illuminati believe they are the true enlightened ones, they utilize it everywhere: flags, logos, emblems, architecture, to mark their presence, their beliefs, and their plan for world domination. But working it into verbal imagery has predominantly taken these two forms: the points of light and the rising sun, or a dawn of a new day. And when they use these terms, they're announcing something. As many scholars know, the Illuminati readily utilize coded language. As early as September 1788, Freemasons George Washington and Alexander Hamilton used the words points of light. The occultist Alice Bailey, in her 1957 book, The Externalization of the Hierarchy, described the points of light as the leaders of the occult group called the New Group of World Servers. Bailey believed that the points of light and light groups were necessary in building up the new age. So maybe the 1,000 points of light that Bush is referring to are a group of 1,000 illuminated individuals who basically run the world. Perhaps that's what he's referring to. How's that for an answer? Okay. Orlando was the first city in the 1,000 points of light. There we go. I think we're winding down here tonight. So a couple of pieces of business before I get out of here. 1,000 years of Sun Kings. Melody, hi Melody. She says, I find it fascinating the same day the South Node moved into 27 degrees conjunct US Pluto, symbolic. Yes, absolutely. Nice call, Melody. Good call. Or B777, got it. 1,000 points of light, Illuminati. Yep. Was that a yod to his moon? I don't know. We'd have to go back. Yep. Imagine 1,000 creeps from that. That's what I think it is. I think it's 1,000 illuminated individuals that run the planet. That's what I think. They killed the clone. Yeah, I think when he expired in that dinner in Japan, that was it. That was the first iteration of Bush. So we've got to do a little bit of unconditional love tonight. We need some unconditional love. We need to like bring the energy up. We need to bring the energy up. Who should we spin the wheel on and give some unconditional love? Okay, I got my my candidate tonight, Mr. Akida TV. Mr. Akida TV, it is your night for unconditional love. It is your night for unconditional love. Let's bring it up. Let's raise the roof for Mr. Akida TV. I like that. I like that. If you want to share some unconditional love with Mr. Akida TV, feel free to. Feel free. Be generous. This is one area you can be generous. You can't like be, there's just plenty of it. You can just let it loose. So I'm actually going to be doing, obviously, a webinar coming up here. And I'm going to let you guys just get into some Akida TV and just give it to them. Just give it up. Just give it up. Just give that love up. You just keep giving that love. I'm going to be right back. I'm going to have a moment here. I'll be right back. Hold on one second. Oh, Jasper's down in his new bed. How about that? Oh, yeah, I like it, man. You guys are blowing it up in there. Just give it up. So I've noticed, right? I've noticed that that people, like, a lot of these internet people, they vape. I've noticed that, right? Like Nathan Stolman takes a hit off of his vape pipe. So I decided that I would every now and then take up smoking a pipe, just for to be anti-vape, right? Plus, smoking a pipe looks kind of literary and cool. So I went out and I bought a pipe last night. Isn't that a good looking pipe? And I got some really fine smelling tobacco. So this is my vape moment. It allows me to talk about the webinar that's coming up in a rather kind of professorial tone. So let me indulge my. Now I can pontificate with a pipe. So we'll be having a webinar here over at robertphoenix.com. But it's about thinking astrologically and beyond. And it's going to be a 6-week webinar. And we're going to be starting this Saturday. And it's going to be very interesting. And might I say, even thought-provoking. We're going to cover astrological symbols of our time. Saturn in Capricorn, Jupiter in Sagittarius, Pluto in Capricorn. And guess what? We're going to go beyond those symbols. We're going to get into thinking metaphorically, allegorically, symbolically, archetypally. So we're going to start off with 3 webinars, right? Starting from the 8th through the 22nd. We're going to take a break for the holidays, and we're going to have 3 more after the holidays. Now, my goal here is to create an environment where we are syncing up with what we call the world matrix in some ways. That's one goal. The other goal is to try to get into the spirit of some of the shows that I was doing at Gaia. A lot of people really like those shows. So we're going to be using Zoom. We're going to be playing with images. We're going to be looking at things kind of in real time. We're going to get into as kind of much of the kind of archetypal resonance of the imagery, especially astrologically, that we're living in. And the great thing about this is that you really don't need to know a lot about astrology, okay? Because there are people who have a really, really hard time with things like algebra, but for some reason they understand quantum physics, right? There's something about quantum physics that kind of kicks into a certain part of the brain, whereas algebraic equations might be a little more challenging. It's along those lines. Think of this as kind of a journey into quantum astrology. You don't have to be a big brain, but you do need to be willing to sort of show up and just be a part of the experience. And I think it's going to be great. I've been really looking forward to doing this for a while. So you can find out more on my website, robertphoenix.com, Thinking Astrologically. It's only 90 minutes. You know, we're going to meet, I believe, was it 2 o'clock, or I think it's 1 o'clock on, I have to check. It's 1 o'clock every Saturday, 3 Saturdays in a row, break for Christmas, and then 3 more after that. And if we dig it and you like it, we can keep going, right? There's more. There's plenty of material out there, trust me. So I'm offering that up. And I think it's a very, very fair price. It's $99 for 6 weeks. And the great thing about it is you're not going to be bolted to a webinar for 5 or 6 hours. 90 minutes, crisp, lots of information. If you can't make it, you'll get the webinar for that day anyway. So if you say you can make 4 out of 6, you're still going to get 6. That's the beauty of the internet in this modern digital age that we're living in. So Thinking Astrologically and Beyond. Check it out. It's on my website. Let's see what else we have. Oh, I've got some specials on my website too. You know, this is a time when people like to have gifts for Christmas with astrology. So I'm doing like specials, half-hour readings, you know, bundled together. You can get 2 of them, you get 3 of them, pretty affordable, right? Half-hour readings. They make great gifts. So I'm throwing that out there to you folks. All right, let me check in with the chat room. Let's see what we got going on here. Flavored tobacco. This is called like, I don't know, whiskey or something like that, right? Oh, Freddie Mercury. Okay, Freddie Mercury. We'll do it. We'll do Freddie Mercury. Okay. Hey, thank you, everybody. Thank you very much for being a part of tonight's show. You know the drill. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to stay open as possible. I'll be back tomorrow with 15 minutes of flame, bright and early here in Fredericksburg, Texas. Until then, have wonderful dreams. And may all of your greatest and sweetest and brightest dreams come true. Have a good night.